And welcome back to Product-Led Festival. It's great to have you with us for another session. I hope you've enjoyed all the content so far. We've got another great session in store for you now. Before we dive into that, just a few housekeeping reminders. You can visit productledalliance.com for lots more resources. There's loads on there, loads of content, loads of useful handouts, useful templates. Make sure to check that out. We do also have access to our free Slack community where you can join 7,500 other product-led pros. Be sure to check that out. And we do also have our paid membership options, which gives you loads and loads and loads of really, really helpful stuff that will maximize the impact you can have in your day-to-day role. So do have a look at that. Just a reminder as well, we have question time at the end of each session. So do be sure to drop your questions into the chat box. You don't need to wait until the end. You can do that as you think of them, and then we'll tackle them off at the end. So with that out of the way, let's get back to the content. So I will invite our next speaker to join me on the virtual stage. And whilst they do that, I will introduce her. So we're delighted to have Erica Ryder, who is the UX architect and design ops thought leader currently at PayPal. And Erica is going to be talking about DesignOps 2.0. So I will hand straight over to you, Erica.
Thank you. Let me get going here. Okay. Go into my presentation mode here. Go. Okay. Yes, I am Erica Ryder. I am currently working at PayPal, and I am the senior manager and user experience lead for DPE at PayPal. That is the Developer Productivity Engineering Group at PayPal. We are a very small group of designers. We have 5 designers, and we're responsible for a ton of different products. We're really far from the traditional 1-to-10 ratio of designer to developer. We're at 5 designers to around 1,000 or more developers across the organization, work across 4 different time zones. And so we're a small team spread really thin. And so this really meant that we had to figure out how we were going to be successful, how we're going to drive an engineering-driven organization to make this transition to one that is customer-focused. And that leads us to DesignOps 2.0, which is what I'm going to talk about today. So as I said, we're an internal organization, and we're responsible for all the tools and the platforms used to build and run PayPal's business, primarily the developer platforms right now. So we work on the different things that help internal engineers deliver stuff to the end users here. And now one thing that I think everyone will agree with is the impact of user experience on a consumer-facing product is pretty high. Everyone kind of understands that this is a big deal here. When it comes to internal products, that is not always thought of as the same. It's not given the same weight. People think, well, this is just an internal product. User experience doesn't matter quite as much. Except I'm here to say that that's actually not correct. A poor user experience on an external tool is potential revenue. It's not real money, but there's a lot of things besides the user experience that can impact your potential revenue, not just the user experience. When we were talking about internal tools that our developers use and our internal customers use to deliver products and to get their jobs done, their daily jobs done, a poor user experience actually is costing the company considerable amounts of money. Through things like extraneous cognitive overload, we have users that don't know how to use our different tools. They have to do workflows that spread across multiple tools and trying to have that understanding of how things change across tools, what they need to do, what tool they need to go to, what they need to do, how do they do this stuff. There's a lot of this kind of, it's not just cognitive overload, it's extraneous cognitive overload. And this results in actually really a huge increase in training costs here. There's high cost for extensive documentation, and there's people never read the documentation. There's the time spent for engineers and internal employees to read the documentation, plus create the documentation and any kind of training programs. And this then leads to a decrease of employee productivity. Okay, right. So the time that they're spent doing their actual job actually goes down quite a bit. So this is quite a bit of toil that's going on within the internal organization because as a result of a poor user experience. Now, these are just kind of the things that you think about here, but there's other issues actually as well. If you think about, like, if I'm working on an internal tool and and I make some change, or I click some button because the user experience was poor on this. I didn't know that clicking this button was going to cause a problem, and it takes the service offline, and it's not available to our end customers. And then this poor user experience is actually costing significant amount of money, right? This is lost transactions that are happening, transactions that would have happened that are not happening now, right? And so these are other kinds of things to think about with internal tools and with the destructive workflows that can happen as a result to a poor user experience. So the user experience and internal products is actually really super important. So I joined PayPal in 2018, and the lay of the land in 2018 was, if we look over here on the right, these are some different tools that users have, and this cognitive overload with our developer tools actually hindered the productivity of our developers considerably here, right? So these three tools here are actually a single workflow that a developer needed to go through to complete a task here. They had to go through the top application actually to create their applications they're going to deploy out. The middle one here is kind of the container management, and the bottom one here is actually monitoring that application when it's up and running here. Right now, it's clear just from these three screenshots here that there's no consistency in the look or feel of any of these, but that's just the beginning of it here, right? The navigation model, when a user travels from one of these to another, is completely different here. Interaction patterns are completely different here. So if a user learns how to use one tool, they can't actually transfer that knowledge to the next tool. Right. And so this creates a cognitive overload for the users here. We have terminology differences between different tools here. And this might be that you have one term that means two different things, or you might have one term that means the same thing in multiple different tools, but those two tools are generating a metric for that term differently, which means that you have a different number. So trying to understand what is the truth, which is the sole source of truth here, is really difficult for users. The other thing is having across different tools two different terms that mean the same thing, and understanding that. Right. So as I said, this actually is creating a difficulty with users trying to complete their task. And this is because a user goes through a portion of their workflow in one tool. Then they have to switch to another tool. They don't necessarily know which other tool they have to go to, because there could be 3 or 4 different tools that do the same thing. So knowing which tool to go to is their problem number one. And then having that shift and maintaining context as they shift between these tools, that's problem number 2 here, right? And there's no clear path, or there was no clear path between the different tools here to complete these tasks. And this was a significant issue here. So when I joined PayPal, I joined to actually work on a new platform called the PayPal Console. PayPal Console. I'm tongue-tied today, and this was meant to be a centralized platform where all these different teams that were delivering these different tools could actually build their tools into a single platform, where the users had a single place to go to do all these different tasks that they have to complete here. Now, one of the key things here is that while we have this platform, the idea is that we've got 60 to 100 different teams, and removing the dependency between different teams to actually deliver their functionality out to the customer. So we had to have federated development here. Now, my previous experience is when you have federated development, trying to maintain a consistent and cohesive user experience is incredibly difficult. Right? You have different teams that don't rely on other teams. There's no relationship between the other teams. They're working in a silo. And so they tend to deliver their user experience in a silo also. And so this was a challenge. And so this was some of the things that we actually did with the console, is we said we want to deliver this platform where we can actually enable these teams to have federated development, deliver stuff on their own cadence, and maintain that consistent, cohesive user experience. But wait, we only have 5 designers to do this. We have 60 to 100 products, 1,000 developers. How do we do this? So we had to actually really get really creative here and figure out what we were going to do here. And so we came up with this mantra. Really, our job as a user experience team within our organization is to enable product teams to successfully deliver useful and usable products. What does that mean? That means that we have to provide the tools, environments, and support to actually empower them, right? And so what we did here, this is pretty much what our talk is going to be about here, but what we've done is we've created the tools for them to be able to do the design. We have created training for them to learn how to actually do design. We've created these programs where we have office hours and we assign a user experience person to multiple different teams, and that user experience person acts as a mentor and teaches design thinking here. And finally, I think this is probably the most key thing, is holding these teams accountable for delivering an excellent user experience, because it's too much the case where you have a user experience team that is doing the designs, and stuff is and user experience is an afterthought, and you'll have a product team that comes up with some functionality without thinking about the user experience as they're developing this functionality, and they'll toss it over the fence to a user experience team and they'll say, make this look pretty. And then what's delivered is a poor user experience, because that user experience is an afterthought here. And the problem is that the team that's held accountable for this is the user experience team. The team that did the development on this is not accountable. They have 100% actually of the control over delivering a user experience and zero accountability. We have a UX team that has zero control over what's delivered and 100% accountability. So this kind of led us to our DesignOps 2. We kind of looked at how we're going to scale this, and we started looking at DesignOps, and traditional DesignOps actually is back several years ago, user experience teams made this push that user experience really matters here, and it's really a key driver in delivering good products to our end users. And so with this push, kind of be careful what you ask for. You got the higher level ups that said, oh yes, design is actually really super important. User experience is really important. And so they said, make it so. And so what that left was a user experience team that says, okay, now we've got a whole bunch of stuff that we have to do, and trying to actually meet this demand for this increased demand is really a problem here. So the way that user experience teams have actually met this is by adding people to that team. And so as you add people to that team, what you have is you need this orchestration. You need people who handle the consistency across user experience team, across user experience designers, hiring. You just have that infrastructure that goes into supporting a team that might have been 5 people and now is 175 people here. And what we still had was we had this UX design that worked in its own workflow, and it tossed it over the fence to a dev team, and there was no coherency between them here. And so we kind of took a step back and we said, this is not really working here, and this is not something that we're going to be able to scale. And so that's where we kind of came up with this model of DesignOps 2.0. And this is our goals here: providing users consistent, predictable user experiences across the tools, enabling the product teams, and being able to scale design without adding designers, because we are an internal team. And so trying to grow an internal team to 175 designers or 200 designers, or to get to that 1-to-10 ratio, is just not something that's going to happen for us here. So we had to be really innovative. And what we looked at was, we said, okay, we have this DesignOps, and DesignOps sounds like DevOps, but it doesn't really operate like DevOps. And so we thought, well, what if we actually take that DevOps mentality and we apply this to DesignOps? And that led us to DesignOps 2.0. And really we said that these are not two different workflows, but this is a product team that's responsible for delivering a product with an excellent user experience. And what is user experience? User experience is more than just the visual design. And the stuff that happens here as part of the user experience is a lot of the same steps that are going on when you're doing your product design, your API design, your data design, and everything else like that. They're the same. And so we said we have these modes of this model here that start with discovery. When you're doing discovery for not just the user experience, but the user experience actually is more than just what the UI design looks like. It's the design of the API, and that you have consistency in commands that happen in the API and CLIs and the UI, right? So as a user travels across these different experiences, there is consistency, and they know what to expect because they travel from one to the other, that they're not disjointed here, right? You have just some discovery that's going to go on into what APIs you need, right? So this discovery mode is not something that just happens with the user experience. It's something that happens when you're going through the product definition stage here. You have to do your discovery of what you're going to deliver. Then you define this. You're going to define all of your API contracts. You're going to define your data design before you start building it. You're going to define what the user experience is going to look like. And then you go into your design. Design is not just UI design. Design is data design. It is API design. It's design of your backend infrastructure. It's everything, right? And so what I'm saying here is that this is stuff that happens in a circular mode. This happens in the same kind of infinity diagram here. And it's not two separate diagrams, it's one. and they impact each other greatly. It's not something that you can separate here. So this says TPX, which is the old name of our organization here. Back in 2018, we were called TPX. Anyway, so this was the product design and development model back in 2018. And what you had is you had a product manager. Sometimes, not always did we have product managers. Sometimes we just had an engineering manager. So we're going to build this. Whoever that person is who's acting as a product manager, they have this idea of what they want this thing to look like. And so they're taking this kind of picture in their head of what they want to build, this tool or product they want to build. They translate that picture into words. Those words go into something like Jira. That Jira story and Confluence pages are passed along to a developer who actually has to read this. And this is like a game of telephone, right? I have a picture. I give a description of that. I give a verbal description to someone, and I whisper it in their ear, and they whisper it in someone else's ear. By the time you get to the end, it has no resemblance to what you actually envisioned in the beginning here. And so this actually happened in a development process here. So when a developer picks this up, they're reading these words, and they're not seeing any kind of picture. They're not getting any kind of real representation of what it is they're supposed to build. And so the picture they have is often, a squirrel. And I've got this picture that doesn't match. Now I have this picture that doesn't match, and I'm going to actually convert this picture that doesn't match into code. I'm going to deliver this to a user. What the user is getting is often not in any way related to what they actually asked for in the beginning here. So you have a user that's confused and is not getting what they're looking for here. And what you see here is you see that there's not actually a designer in this whole model here. And so our DesignOps 2.0 model here that we developed here is considerably different here. And because we only have 5 designers, we cannot have this traditional 3 in a box where you have a designer, a product manager, and an engineering lead, right? We just don't have the resource to be able to scale that. And so the model that we've taken here is we have a product team with a domain expert that could be a product manager, it could be an engineering lead, it could be an engineer, but they are kind of your domain expert. They're the ones who know really what we're doing. They're going out and they're talking to users. They're the ones who are actually going to take their domain knowledge and they're going to work in UXPin, which is the tool that we built. And I'm going to give a little video that I'll show in a little bit here of how this is working for us here. But here they can do a prototype really quickly here in a matter of a day or so with someone who's not a designer. We have over 3 hours of training videos that we've created to actually teach our domain experts, engineers, product managers, everybody to actually be able to do the design. And we've built our tooling so that it snaps together like Legos, and they're using the same components to actually build their prototypes that they're going to use to build their end products here. And it just kind of snaps together. We have easy ways of configuring this stuff. So when you build a prototype, it's really super fast, and it's exactly what you can build because they're using the same components, not only when you're using form components and data grids and data visualizations, but our layout components are the same also. And so a developer actually can go, and we can have these conversations with developers in this process, and they can actually look at a view of the prototype, and they can see how it's laid out here. And so they can see, oh, we're using a horizontal stack component. And this horizontal stack component is laid out this way, and it's got vertical stack components nested and whatnot. They can see the layout components. They can see all the components that we use, how we configure those components. And so that actually reduces that where they were taking a picture and they didn't know what they were building. This actually is laying out exactly how they're going to do it. So this is not, this notion of a pixel perfect mockup is a misnomer to me because it is an artist representation, and it may or may not be something that a developer can build. We do not have that problem here because what we're building in our prototypes is always something that a developer can build because we're using those same components. And because we can iterate through this really quickly. Once we have something here, we can take that design and we can work with a developer who then now is in the loop in the beginning. Through this whole process, they're in the loop, so they always know what's going on. They're never getting blindsided by something. And they can give their feedback, and we can iterate on that really quickly in this rapid cycle here, and then we can go out to users. And once we have something that we're taking out to users, it's super quick to iterate on stuff. So as long as we don't know, as long as not kind of really weird things that are coming up that we didn't predict, mostly there are little changes here, and we can make a small change, or we can make a medium-sized change in a matter of an hour or two, and we can go out to a user again that afternoon. So we're not looking at like, oh, we got to do a bunch of research, and then we have got to make iterations, and we got to go out and do research again. We can actually iterate in that process as we're finding things that are kind of goofy. And so when we actually are delivering to a developer here, we've done quite a bit of research, and we're pretty confident on what it is that we're going to deliver to our end users here. That developer is now getting a prototype that looks and acts exactly like what they're going to build. And now what they have in Jira are some requirements, API contracts, things like that. But it's not a verbal or textual description of what they're supposed to build. What they're supposed to build is defined in a prototype here. So this means like our product teams actually have to be responsible for delivering a good user experience. To deliver a good user experience, we have to have a common understanding of what exactly the user experience is. As I alluded to before, user experience is not just about visual design and visual. It's not just about visual design. If we look at this diagram that I have here, this is a emotional flow that I did back in 2018 of our developers as they were going through our SDLC process here. And everything that's below the line here is a negative experience, and everything that's above the line is a positive experience. And you can see that the user spent quite a bit of time under the line here. And there's a lot of things like, I can't find documentation. My build failed. It failed again. My build keeps failing, and then it mysteriously passes. I don't know why it's failing. I don't know why it's passing here. So these are actually these are significant user experience problems that are not something that is really the design. They are something that is a failure in the product team. And their ability to tell the user why the build failed in plain English that they can understand. Why does it keep failing? And then now, why did it all of a sudden pass, right? So if you look at the stuff that's below the line here, a majority of what you see below the line here is not about visual design. This is about breakdowns and the product team and what they're delivering and actually providing information to a user on that they need to actually complete their workflows, right? So kind of down here on the bottom, there's a few things here that really these are things that as a development team, we care about, and teams are measured on latency, availability, security. These are things that they're measured on, but the reason they're measured on these is because of the impact this has on the user experience. If I'm a user and I click on a button and I've got a 3-minute response time between the time I clicked on that button and the time something actually happened, that's a poor user experience. If I go to a URL and that URL is not available, if I get a gateway error or something else, that's a bad user experience, right? So these are breakdowns in your engineering team and something that your engineering team did. But the reason we care about this is because of the user experience. Security. If my account gets hacked, oh my God, is that a bad user experience? I'll tell you, I don't want my account hacked. That's a horrible user experience for me. Finally here, error messages that I can't read. Don't show me things like error 12378. Process failed. I don't care. I want to know what I can do to fix it. So don't give me error messages that don't have a way for me to resolve these. That is a horrible experience. And that is one of the all too common things that happens. So this has been an evolution of responsibility for product teams. What do? They need to deliver a good user experience. We don't expect them to do this on their own. They have to conduct user research, and they work with my team. They've got to do the design and prototypes, and we give them guidance for this stuff here. On my side, on my team side, we actually have had significant changes because we have to transition to enable a self-service, providing the mentorship to guide these teams, which I talked a little bit about. But this is kind of a key thing here is that you catch a fish or teach a person to fish, and we're trying to teach people to fish here. And what we found is actually when we have UX designers and we teach them to be a domain expert, they move on to a different domain, and that domain expertise is not something that transfers. But if we teach a domain expert in networking or a Docker or something like that, we teach them design thinking, that is going to be something that's going to be transferable. And that design thinking is going to actually help them be a better product manager, a better engineer in the future, right? The key thing here is this actually frees my team up to think of bigger UX problems. How do we actually build stuff for a platform? How do we establish trust between users? How do we build that cohesive experience across everything here? So I'm running really quick on time here, but I'm getting near the end here. So this is actually, we delivered stuff in UXPin, and we've got, 60 components here. And these are the same components that we use to build our end product in the console here. And so what you can see is this is a 3-minute video building a prototype from nothing to a fully functioning prototype in 3 minutes. This is the only thing that's really been cut out of this is the time where I'm kind of thinking about what do I need to do next here. This isn't something that's been sped up here. So if you look at things here, like what I'm doing here is we got this data grid component over here on the right-hand side, and this takes a CSV import. And so I can go to one of my products, I can export data into a CSV file, and I can import it in here, and bam, it just renders. I don't have to do anything like this. If I was doing this in Figma or something like that historically, this here would have taken me hours and hours and hours, and that took me 30 seconds here. I can do the same thing with this chart here, and I'm going to actually see if I can skip ahead here. So I want to skip ahead so you can actually see this working here. Boom, boom, all this stuff here. Get to the end. One more. There we go. So now we're actually looking at, this is actually the prototype in the end. So you kind of got a quick view of what I was doing there. These are the actual charting components that we use in our library here. This data grid is actually a data grid, right? So not only does it look like a data grid that you would deliver in your end product, but sorting and filtering and everything else works just as it would in your end product here. Right, these are all the same components that we're using inside of our production environment here. So moving ahead in the effort of time here, back to accountability. We have too much that if you're going to deliver a good user experience, really a good user experience, you have to have accountability, and this means that your development team currently has zero accountability, but they deliver the end user experience. The UX team doesn't deliver this. They say this is what we want. The development team actually delivers this. So they have 100% control over what is delivered. They do not have to do what we want. They do not have to do what we want. But who is accountable for that? The UX team is 100% accountable for that user experience that's delivered. And so to actually deliver a great user experience, we've got to tip the scale and even it out here. And so there's a shared accountability here. Quickly on the measuring of user experience, because I got about 3 seconds left here. We're currently working through how to actually measure the user experience. We've instrumented all of the components that you see here. All those in production are instrumented. So we actually can do quite a bit of stuff where we have user experience dashboards, so we can actually measure the user experience across our products inside this platform here. And that is something that you can look for in future talks in next year, because this is something that we're actively doing right now, and it's really pretty cool. For us getting to DesignOps 2.0, there are these 4 main areas here. It's developing and understanding the user, enabling product teams, measuring the success, and holding them accountable. We have fully delivered on the enabling product teams to do their own directed design. We are most of the way there on measuring the success of the user experience. This is the key thing for developing, for teams to actually develop an understanding of their user, is to be able to do a user experience, measure the success, figure out where their holes are, then go back and actually work with users, right? Measuring the success of the user experience is also about holding them accountable, right? So if we're going to get to a good user experience, we have to hold them accountable. I think the slides will be available here. Here's some public stuff that we have available that you can actually see a demo of building prototypes, some of our training videos, some articles that my team has written here. No, we are not putting designers out of work. Thank you. And I'm going to get to our Q&A here.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Erica. That was really, really interesting. I enjoyed that a lot. So if you do have questions, we've got about 90 seconds or so. I didn't want to cut you short on the presentation, but we've got about 90 seconds for questions. So if you want to get those in the chat, if you can, then that would be fantastic. Whilst we're getting those questions through, I thought I would kick off with one. It seems like you've achieved a lot. So I was just wondering how much time and iteration did it take to arrive at the DesignOps 2.0 approach?
In reality, or how much time at PayPal, because this is something that I actually have been working on, this concept, although not in this final form, for many years at previous companies. That it was a theory that I had been working on, and it was at PayPal, and it was when UXPin merged and UXPin came along that we actually were able to realize this stuff. We started in 2019. Working on an alpha version of this stuff, and I had this weird idea and went to a developer and said, what do you think of this? And he was able to build a few things over the weekend that I could show in 2019. And within a few months, we were using it on my team, and we were delivering it and having product managers using it within 9 months. And that was kind of the kickoff here. And so, but we're still not there, right? We still have a lot of things to do. We've enabled that design part of it, but we still have a lot of stuff that we're doing.
Fantastic. We have about 19 seconds left, I'm afraid, so we'll have to end it there. But if you do have questions for Erica that we didn't get a chance to get to, maybe connect on LinkedIn. I know you've dropped your LinkedIn profile in the chat there, Erica, so do reach out, and I'm sure Erica will be more than happy to answer any questions in follow-up. All that is left for me to say is thank you again, Erica.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move straight on to our next session, so you can go back to the agenda, click on the link, and we'll see you there shortly. Thank you all.